it's Jennifer Vatsa from Belladonna's Botanicals, and today I am going to talk about 7 things to consider for newcomers and outsiders to witchcraft when talking to, um, you know, uh, whether it's a friend who's a witch, whether it's a business owner, content creator, etc. Some of this is based upon observation and experience and things I've heard from other people, but I I prefer to do top 10 lists, but I just didn't feel like putting in any filler, so I just wanted to kind of get to the point with this. So I did an earlier video about on like top 10 tips for uh new beginner witches, something like that. So this is a kind of a follow-up to that and going a little further into and clarifying some things that I see, especially for people who are maybe not as familiar or with the broad spectrum of the occult, metaphysical, new age, um all of that. So the first one is that not all witches are theistic, in the sense that not all witches work with any particular, pantheon of deities, or work with gods and goddesses, or work with angels and demons, or things like that. There are non-theistic witches out there, or there are people who practice witchcraft but don't necessarily work with any particular spirits in that sense. Maybe they might have their own spirit guides or ancestors, but not all witches do that. Not all witches, you don't have to. I mean, I initially kind of came in from that angle until I started working with the dark goddesses and some of the demonic divine a few years ago. But I mean, initially going back, I was kind of more into some of the Celtic stuff. We're talking like 30 years ago, but anywho, so there are many polytheistic, I'm just going to say that for a lack of a better word, of witches who work within various pantheons. Some might work with a particular archetype, like they might like to work with goddesses of love and war, or something that's around a particular area in that sense. So they might work with, or the underworld. They might work with hell from the North's pantheon for underworld. They might work with Hecate from the Greek pantheon. Saint Duarte. That they might be working with multiple pantheons around a similar sort of archetypal theme. So that's something that you want to consider. There are, well, I'll say there are numerous types of witches. There's even Christian witches. A lot of times people like to categorize. I mean, technically, I'm probably eclectic more than anything else. I just lean a little bit more towards, the black magic, Luciferian, satanic side of things. But not all witches are, devil worshippers or whatever, because it's just a common question people get asked. It's there's all different types of witches. So accepting that there are satanic witches or there are Luciferian witches, in the same light as there are Wiccan witches and any green witches, white witches, whatever you want to call it. Male witches, that's also a thing. It's kind of, there's a lot of different categorization for it, but the main thing the main takeaway from this, number one, is it depends on the witch as to whether they're theistic or non-theistic. Not all witches are Wiccans. I, for one, am not a Wiccan. Wicca is a religion, whereas witchcraft is more of a practice that, some people more into folk magic, things like that. I'm just not. I mean, I may have been I was into Wicca stuff like years ago, because that was all there was really access to at the time, or at least I had access to at the time. So, and there's a different, at least in my experience, I would never describe anything I do as worshiping a deity or spirit or demon or angel or whatever. Like I look at it as like working partnerships of working within the spirit world. So, yes, I have altars and offerings and things like that, but um it's not worship in the same way that one would think of in like, Western traditional religions and things of that nature. So, um number two, and this happens a lot, from inside the community and outside the community, is that a lot of times um, people are a little more concerned about what we look like versus, or, it can go anywhere from you don't look like a witch to, being fetishized in some like Hollywood, Comic-Con cosplay witch sort of thing. And I'm like, no, but it's very minimizing to those who consider their practices and their spirituality as sacred. So, I mean, like, okay, sexy witch costumes exist at Halloween. I'm not gonna, smite anyone for wearing one. But also realize that that's a trope. Separate that from what actual witches do. Yes, we dress, some of us dress, this. I'm pretty much of a comfy witch. I'm like stretchy cotton shirts and leggings most of the time, or jammies. I put in my corset and tutu days during my goth years, and I have no desire to revisit that because, ouch. Anyways, so that is another thing that I want to talk about, especially because, I mean, I'm not the only one that gets people sliding up into our DMs like, "Oh, you look pretty. Oh, will you be my friend?" Or being, or the association that because we're a witch, we're a slut, or we'll do sex magic with people that we, met on the internet and don't know. Like, try to maybe form a conversation and something first. And I had that happen once a few years ago of, someone, and it was creepy because they were local, and they also had, I think, were worked at the same university I worked at the time, but it's kind of like, I need a female for an operation. I'm like, of course it's a sex magic operation. So I'm not gonna, perform sex magic with a skeevy stranger though from the internet because ew. If that's your thing, great. No problem there, but not for me. And it should not be an assumption that, we're all into that. So number three, since we're counting loosely, I like to think that within witchcraft and, the broader occult, metaphysical, new age community, that everyone is welcome. And while occult communities and new age communities and all of that have their issues, like any community would, the one thing I would say, especially to newcomers and anyone who's sort of learning about an aspect of witchcraft or practice that is not of their own, try not to be judgmental about it when you're talking to someone, because I've literally had people be like, ew, you practice dark magic, like in that looking down there, coming from a place of where it's like, I perceive the person to be looking down their nose, being, well, I only practice light magic, pusillanimous slug on the floor, that kind of thing. And regardless of what you practice, whether it's light magic, dark magic, everything between, eclectic and whatnot, we have enough outside stigma to not have to deal with internalized stigma around other people's practices. So what I'll say there is, and in terms of outside stigma, the people that will be burning us at the stakes will be burning all of us, regardless of whether we're love and light or, practicing, Satanism. So that distinguishment is not going to matter to those people that would, not suffer a witch to live, as it were. We're all going to burn on the same, town square thing. Whether you're like, but I'm a loving witch, and that's not going to matter. We're all on the same team, so start acting like it. Because it is a little disheartening to see people come in and being really judgmental, especially because a lot of it is things they don't understand or stuff that is misconstrued through popular media and TV shows and Hollywood and other mainstream religions and things like that. So there's a lot of indoctrination that has happened from outside resources that people may not even be aware of that can influence how you perceive a witch. Because even I've had like regular run-of-the-mill people, when I mention, being a witch, be like, oh, but you don't practice dark magic or black magic, do you? Which brings me to topic number 4. Well, that's actually gonna be topic number 4 and topic number 6. But anyways, being out of the broom closet is a luxury that not all of us have. I have clients and customers in countries where the laws as such that are punishable by, unaliving. So not everyone can be out in their community. I have the luxury and privilege of being able to, but at the same time, there is some discretion that, I think that people should look upon, especially like, I don't have kids, but you know what? Like if I had kids that were going to school, I wouldn't want them to be harassed and bullied because someone leaked that their mom's a witch. You know what I'm saying there? Like, I wouldn't want that blowback to come to innocent children. And I say this as a non-mom, or at least I'm an auntie, but I would not want that to be the case. So, be careful not outing someone as a witch, or regardless of where they are on the spectrum and things like that, because being able to live your truth in who you are and your spirituality is amazing, but it can also have consequences and dangers. I've seen it happen to people I know. It's kind of like, it's not everyone's families accept them. Sometimes you live in a place where you just can't be out like that. Like, in the deep rural South, I would be terrified for my life. In an urban city, no, not so much. It's kind of like around here, it's kind of like none of your business. Don't, live and let live, and don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong and mind your own business. So, but that said, it's not across the board. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way, to be, to be caustic about it, I guess, in a public way or in a mostly. But anyways, I digress on that. I just wanted to say that, this is about, living your truth, being out of the broom closet or not, and respecting that, sometimes like I just send people products without labels on them because so their family doesn't know what they're doing. Or they're in a country where they could get a lot of trouble in a kind of way. Anyways, so number 5. This is more of an internal thing, but as far as when it comes to beginner witches and even other people who've been here a long time, like each person's experience is valid, and they might have very different experiences than you. Like, I think I've had people question me, and I think I realized that a lot is being neurodivergent makes my experiences with the spirit world just different. and it's hard to explain how they might be different. Um, but because my mind works differently. And so you need to understand that. Your experience might be, aligned with other people's experiences, or might be way out there, but it's important to be able to discern your spiritual gnosis and experience from delusional psychosis. And as someone with mental health issues, that I can do. The thing is, when you're having a spiritual experience, you're aware of the fact you're having a spiritual experience. When you're having delusional psychosis, you are not aware at all of it, and you cannot discern the difference between that. And there's a lot of mental health issues in the community. I see them. I mean, granted, I have my own, but at the same time, I don't deal with that level. I don't have that thankfully, in my spectrum array of things that are going on in my little brain. But generally, I personally, like anyone who is sitting there claiming to be the one and only true, incarnation of whatever deity. Usually, on my side of the occult, it's the one true Lucifer, the one true Satan, the one true Samael. And that's it. And you can't. The thing is, you can't even talk to them in that. Now I believe that people can have aspects of incarnate deities within them, but sorry, there's probably no one walking the earth that is the one true Lucifer. And if they did, they probably wouldn't have 200 subs on their YouTube channel. Sorry, bro. But I've seen way too much of that. And these people believe their own bullshit in a way that you can't talk to them. You can't, there's no reasoning. It's just like, you have to believe that I'm Lucifer because I'm telling you that I'm Lucifer. So kindly don't follow those people. Because that way ends in madness, and not the good kind. Yeah, so you really have to look at that. There are also people who can have delusional psychosis due to drug use and things like that. Like I do medical ketamine treatments for treatment-resistant depression. Now, one of the things that what happens with that, and I say this a lot because I'm going to do a separate video on that, is that ketamine makes your neuroplasticity of your brain more malleable. And in that, you become more open to change. So if you're like trying to do some deep trauma healing or working through a depressive episode or stuff like that, it opens your brain to be able, the neuroplasticity of how your brain functions, to be able to be like, make a hurdle, make a connection that you hadn't previously made. Now afterwards, it lasts for a while, that neuroplasticity. It's not just while you're doing the ketamine. So they always recommend after your ketamine treatment to kind of, be mindful of what you're consuming as far as social media, television, news, because you're in a highly susceptible state. And I'm guessing that probably goes for other psychedelics as well. And they also recommend having, like for the ketamine treatments, 7 to 14 days in between is about average. Because if you're doing it like back to back to back, you're just gonna be in this constant open state. And what can happen if you're in a constant open state like that, if you say just picked a category of videos to watch, you might suddenly be believing things that are not anything in your belief structure. You might suddenly, become under the influence of someone dangerous, because your mind is open and more susceptible. So you might believe that dude that says he's the one true Lucifer and start following him. So that's something to keep in mind, and a much broader topic for a longer video on its own. So where am I? That was number 5. So number 6, and I want to talk about this, is black magic and baneful magic are different. There's a lot of stigma and around what exactly is black magic. People usually assume it's evil, it's selfish, it's doing it's just cursing people. It's just, now while it allows for cursing people more so than like traditions that follow like the threefold law, that rely a little bit more on defensive magic than say offensive magic in that sense, is that baneful magic is just that kind of classification of doing a curse on someone for any number of outcomes, whether it's a unaliving curse, whether it's a breakup curse or something like that, controlling, manipulating, and things like that. That's usually what's under the rubric of baneful magic. Not all black magicians or left-hand path people or Satanists or Luciferians practice a whole lot of baneful magic. Some do it way too freaking much. But they're not synonymous for one another. Black magic is another avenue of practice that kind of allows for the exploration of darker themes within the general occult and magic practice and stuff. So you tend to find more people who are working in black magic with like demons and dark goddesses, and some of them are doing underworld work and things like that, more so than you might find in other traditions and practices. But it doesn't mean that they're evil or that they're just working with a different type of energy and different kinds of outcomes. And I think there's a lot of nuance to selfish and selfishness. And that's one I've come to understand. And I say it loud and proud. I'm like, I'm committed to being more selfish, because I have been the person who, the one in the plane crash that's running around trying to save everyone else while bleeding to death. No one else noticed, and then I collapse and die. That I have always been so selfless and so centered on helping other people that I forget I exist. And I treat myself like crap. So I have to take a me first approach sometimes, to keep myself well-grounded, safe, sane, and healthy. So that might come across as being selfish to some people, but in order to be selfless, I have to take care of myself first. And that's where I stand my ground on that, and that nuance of that delineation. So, I mean, I'm sure there's some evil black magicians out there, and evil Satanists, and evil. I don't even believe in good. I'm tired of the dualistic kind of lingo of good versus evil, black versus light, and dark, and blah blah blah. Practicing black magic can overlap with baneful magic, but it's not part and parcel of its entire practice of it, because people think of black magic as negative magic. I mean, if I am working with Lucifer on a healing spell and doing energy work in Reiki, does that sound evil to you and negative? I don't think so. But I digress. So that was number 6. So number 7, moving on from the duality of evil, or actually rather incorporating it, I maybe have jumped ahead a little there, is generally speaking, witches aren't evil. I mean, I know there's a trope for it, and there are some people, you have bad apples in every community. I'm sure there's a total B word in your knitting community that's the worst person you've ever had to deal with. But that's just the way of the world, is you have all types of people involved, and one bad apple doesn't define the whole orchard. maybe you might even have a couple bad trees, but it's not necessarily, it's not really fair to look at someone and just assume they're bad, evil, corrupt, wicked, whatever, because they're probably not. Sure, some people might be, but probably about 99% aren't. And some people I think would like to be considered evil and bad and whatnot for their own egoistic reasons, but I'm not going to go there. I don't know. I'm very much of a live and let live. Everything is interconnected. So whether you want to call it, white magic, dark magic, purple monkey dishwasher magic, that is, I don't know, it's up to you. That's where I'm at. So just to recap, not all witches are theistic. Some are non-theistic. And there's all types of witches. Kindly don't sexualize us unless, we have a like OnlyFans or something where that's appropriate. Because being fetishized for your spirituality is kind of icky. And it's different from the Catholic schoolgirl fetish. I'm just saying. All are welcome. Don't judge the path and practices of others. Like, I personally don't care what people practice. If they're just, out there doing their own thing, don't, as long as you're not trying to harm people for no good reason. And, out of the broom closet or not, there are things to consider on that level, and each person's experience is valid, but just be careful and understand that there is a lot of delusional psychosis. So I'll just say that spirit work will drive you crazy, but sometimes you can go through some pretty intense spiritual experiences that can be very like, I need to sleep for 3 days now. Thanks. And black magic and baneful magic are two entirely different things. And hey, we're not all evil. And in the end, I think if we just look at moving towards a more non-dualistic approach in how we define or don't define things, and that we're all part of this, collective whole of practice and spirituality, that maybe we should like start looking at our commonalities more than our differences. But hey, what do I know? Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe, and if you really dig our content, you can become a member on YouTube or on our Patreon for premium content that comes out every month. Love y'all.